Everyone, welcome to AB Construction on how to install a slab door. First thing you want to do when you pull up to the job site is you want to check the size of the door that you have that you need to replace. If the current door is a hollow core or a solid core, you need to check the thickness, what kind of hinges are there, and what kind of hardware is there. And if you need to get any of those things while you're out, just make a notation of what you got. All right, so you got your door, you got your hardware, you got your hinges. First step, what you're gonna do is we are going to plane this slab down, which we just got. And what we mean by planing is, if you put your combination square around the edge of the door, you'll see that there's a slight difference on the leading edge of the door. And what that does is, when he closes this door, it'll prevent the door from binding up in the jamb. Okay, so you're gonna do that on the latch side. You're also gonna do that on the hinge side. And typically what we do is about 1/8 of a plane down. All right, so you got your slab here. What we're gonna start doing now is we are going to determine what side is going to be our latch side and what side is going to be our hinge side, and we're going to indicate that on top with marks. Very first thing you want to do before you do all that though is you want to measure down from the top right at 44 inches, and what you're going to do is you're going to want to knock on these slab doors, especially if you're working with a hollow core door, because what happens, well, listen. Okay, we got that. Now it's pretty obvious to tell that this side is hollow. We do not want to put our knob there. We want to put it on this side where we have the meat. So now that we have that, we are going to line up the door as it would be going into the pocket. We're going to make our marks on the top of the door. So what he's doing there, that is showing what direction the plane is going. It's a little exaggerated, but that's just to help us to determine where we're gonna set our planer. Okay, so that's our hinge side. And what that X indicates, it determines which way the hinges are going to blow out the door. And by blow out the door, we can look over here on the existing door, and we can see on this side, you can see on this side right here, it's blown out. This side, we're keeping that meat. And that's what that X determines on top of there. And coming back to our door, we're gonna do the exact same thing, except this is going to be our latch side. This is a very important step, and that also indicates what is top. So you have all your marks on top, and it's gonna be your top. All right, so we have our doors set up on our workstation. Got our hinge side, and there's our latch side. We have the line indicating how we want this door to be planed down. This particular model right here on the DeWalt cordless planer doesn't have a pivot, so this little rip fence right here has been modified to give us that slight angle on the hinge and latch side. You set your depth on here. Typically, what we go to is 32nd of an inch. And you're going to keep going, keep doing your passes on this until it matches the existing door. And what we're doing is 3/16 of an inch. So we're gonna be doing 4 passes. All right, so now we can see that we have that slight bevel in the door after 4 passes. We're gonna repeat this step for the latch side. All right, so now we flipped it around. We got our latch side up. Since we are using this particular planer, make sure you're aligning that fence in the correct position. So you make sure you're taking that bevel and putting it on the correct side. You're gonna pull measurements on this one. So we did 4 passes on one side. We're gonna do 3 on this, and then we're gonna take a measurement on our low side and make sure it's matching what our existing door is. And if we need to make any adjustments with that, if our door is a little bit too big or a little bit too loose, this is where we can start making that adjustment. And just always make sure you guys are wearing your PPE. And as you're coming across there, just make sure you're keeping that planer nice and flat, so you don't have anything that comes out a little odd on there. All right, so now that we did our passes, we're gonna double check our measurements over here on our low side, because that's gonna be what's gonna be hitting our door jamb. Right now, we're sitting, looks right at 35, we can go ahead and call that 11/16. So we're gonna come over here and see what our door's doing here. Checking our low side. And it's pretty much right on. All right, so now that we have our door planed, the next thing you wanna do is get the measurements for where you're gonna put your hinge template on your new slab. And what he's doing here is he's putting tape on the hinges because we're gonna be making some marks. Now, this is pretty good practice, just because if you're gonna be putting marks on something, you wanna make sure it is easily removable. So now, what he's gonna do, he's gonna find the center of each hinge. He's measuring it now. Okay, you're just gonna make a clear visible mark right there, right in the center. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna measure from the top of the jamb to the center line on these hinges. And what you wanna do when we go into this is you're checking your existing door, and if you need to make any adjustments, this is where you're gonna make it. So if your door's a little too tight, or if it's a little too big, you can play with those numbers right here. But our door is fitting really good as is, so we're measuring from the top of the jamb to our center line on the hinge, 10 inches. What we need to do is you need to leave at least 3/16 of a gap. That way your door closes nicely, so you're gonna deduct 3/16 from that 10 inches. So we got our door flipped around right here. We have it orientated correctly. We got that measurement, now we're transferring it down. There's 10 inches. We're counting back 3/16 to give it that room for when it closes. And that's our new center mark. So we just repeated that step for the top, middle, and bottom hinge. Now that we have all our marks over here, we're gonna square this center line off. And as always, make sure you always double check your measurements. And we like to actually write the physical measurements down on the door itself. That way it gives not only a mental, but a visual for what your measurement is. So now that we have all those marked out, we got this Porta-Cable template jig here. Real nice set. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our templates now on over here. First thing you wanna do when you put your template on is determine your high and low side. So obviously this is gonna be our low side. And this jig has a rail side, which is this guy right here. You connect all of them together to make one long run if you're doing multiple doors. But for this instance, we're just gonna put this one on here. And what you do is you always make sure that your rail side is on the low side, like that. Because that is gonna determine when you put your router in here that this is gonna get blown out. This side we're saving, this side we're blowing out. So on this particular model, you can adjust to any size hinge up to 6 inches. So what he's doing now is he's gonna make this right at 3.5, because that's what our hinges are now. We got 3.5, and make sure you adjust both of them. This one's going to go to 3.5 as well. That little arrow right there, that's 4, this is 3, so in between those is 3.5. Now we'll bring this guy over here. Like I said, rail side goes on low side. There's a little notch right in there that he's gonna line up with his center mark. That is where he wants his template at. These have little set pins. Just hammer that right into the door. Make sure it's nice and secure. And we just repeat this for the middle and bottom hinge. All right, so now that we have everything marked out, our templates on, we are going to assemble our router with the correct bits and bushing. So this model right here is the DW621, and right here we have our bushing plate. He's gonna start putting this together. So you see how that's recessed right there? You gotta make sure you put your threads in that way. Yep, there you go. And now, put that little ring on right there. Make sure it's nice and tight. All right. Just adjusting it to make sure, because you want to make sure the seat's completely flat. That way you don't have any rock or bevel to your route. So now we're going to put that bad boy in there. Get our set screw. Okay, so that holds our bushing. Okay, now we're going to get our router bit. So yeah, when you put your bit in, this is what the depth you're kind of looking at, to the depth of your bushing. And then the size of your router bit and bushing is determined by what kind of hinges you have. The ones that we have is a 5/8 roundover, and we're gonna be using a 1.25" straight cut bit. And this little bushing right here is an 1.5" outside diameter, 1 3/8" inside diameter. And if you're using anything else, let's say it is either a 1/4 roundover or a square, you're gonna use a 1/2" straight cut bit, 1.5" straight cut bit with a bushing that has an outside diameter of 1 3/16" and inside diameter of 5/8. All right, so we're getting ready to put this bad boy in. As always, when changing out bits and bushings, always make sure your router is unplugged. So now that we're all lined up, what we need to do next is set the depth of this. This is a plunge router. So we're able to set this bad boy right where we want it. And then I'm gonna let Austin here talk us through what he's gonna be doing to set this.
First, what we want to do is loosen the adjustment screw knob. This holds the depth gauge in place. So we're going to loosen that. We're going to bring this up, make sure we have plenty of room there. And then we're going to take this and turn it counterclockwise, which will allow our plunge router to move up and down. And we want to bring this down until we hit the door. We've hit it there, clockwise to lock it in. And now we want to bring this down to where these two hit. We're good there. And then on this particular model, this inside will turn. And we're going to turn that to 0. We want to lock this into place. And now we'll get the hinge to adjust with it. So the easiest way to do that is to make sure you have the hinge that you're going to use on hand. So now we're going to loosen this adjustment knob back up. We are going to turn this clockwise, lifting this gap here. We're going to stick our hinge between the two, turn it counterclockwise until that's tight. Tighten the adjustment knob, pull out the hinge, and as you can see, we've got a little bit of gap there, and that will cause the router to plunge down to the depth we need.
All right, so all these are routed out. We are set. Next step is that we're gonna flip this thing over and start doing our bore. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put our holes in for our hinges. He has a self-centering bit right there. Make sure you're using the right side. That's very important. That way your screws don't strip out and they're going in the correct spot. Okay, when assembling your hinges, just a quick tip, make sure it is opening the correct way, and also that this pin is facing down, not up. That could cause you problems. All right, so now we're over to our bore side, our latch side. We're marking center of the existing latch. And this is also going to give our measurement what we're going to pull down from the door. Okay, so now he's going to pull that same measurement, what we just did, less the 3/16. Remember, whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other. So he has his mark, what he pulled over there. Going to put a piece of tape and do his mark. That way, when we do our finish work, a lot less stuff that we have to remove or cover up. All right, so he has that center line that he made. He's now going to square that across. That way our bore matches our latch. All right, so this is our bore template. There are two types of sets for the bore. Back set is at 2 3/8 and 2 3/4. This one in particular, this model lets you just snap back and forth, so I'll demonstrate that action. There's your 3/4, push it back, and there's your 2 3/8. The existing doors are 2 3/8, so that's what we're setting this to. This little guy right here goes on the thickness of the door and pretty much self-centering, so as you screw that down, tightens around the door, keeps that latch bore centered no matter what the thickness of your door is. All right, so we got our center line there, and then right in that little triangle, a little difficult to see, but that's where you can view where your center line is. You can also see it on his latch side as well. Just line up that line around the door. That way everything flows smoothly. Let's tighten that guy up, and we're good to go. All right, so now we're assembling the hole saw here. This is 2 1/8 is what a typical door bore is gonna be. Important thing to note, when drilling this, always make sure you do the big hole first, little hole second, and most importantly, do not go all the way through on your first penetration. Just make sure the tip of the drill bit is poking through. That way you can come through the other side and drill it. If not, you're gonna have a lot of tear out on your door. All right, so there's your bore. Now we go to the little side. And through the latch side, it's a 1-inch hole saw. We're just gonna go all the way through now. All right, so now that we have our template hammered down up there, he's tightened these guys down, and that just keeps it right up against the door. So when we're routing, it doesn't move around. Typically we carry 2 different routers. This one specifically for the latch. This one has a little bit of different bushing. The inside diameter is 9/16, the outside diameter is 5/8, and that is a 1-inch straight cut.
Half-inch cut.
A half-inch straight cut. All right, this particular model we have zeroed out right on top of the door. It's a little bit different than the plunge router. That little guy right there, you unlock that, drop it right on the door, and then when you go to make your micro adjustments, it's gonna be that collar that you twist. And then dropping this bushing right back on the plate here after we got our depth set. And when you start routing, make sure the bit is always inside the hole and not on the wood, or you're gonna have a few problems. Since our latch is square and we can only route to round things, this is our square punch. That just fits right in the corner. A few firm strikes, and now you have a square edge. We're gonna repeat that in all 4 corners. Now if that's all routed out, we're gonna test the fit, make sure it's flush on top, and fits in the hole. This is how you're going to want it to sit. So you notice it's completely flat on top. It doesn't get recessed in. It's not bulging above. This is where you're looking for. Once again, make sure you use the self-centering bit. All right, and then usually we like to do the assembly of all the hardware on the ground before we hang it. All right, so when you're putting on your hardware, make sure you're orientating the knobs in the correct spots. Right now we're on the outside. This side's the inside. This one is a bypass. All right, just make sure you're orientating your hardware correctly. The strike's going in the correct position. This one doesn't have a lock, so it doesn't matter what side goes on which. This is gonna be more visible side, so we're gonna put the screws on the inside of the room. All right, our door is all prepped. We can now take off our old door and put on our new door. All right, got this guy up. Now test the fit. And there you have it. That is how you install a door slab. Last but most importantly, make sure you have a clean work site. We put a drop cloth down so we're able to get the majority of our shavings up and just leave your job site nice and clean.